Hi, good morning. It's Councillor Glen. I am along Stittsville Main Street. A couple reasons I'm here this morning. One is it's hard to see, but in the background, I'm trying to point to it there, right there. There's a couple little white signs. Some new signage that was installed this week thanks to the Stittsville Business Association. With support from the City of Ottawa and from a number of local businesses, some shop local signage, just to promote our local businesses here in Stittsville. So congratulations and thank you to the Stittsville Business Association for managing that sign installation. They look great along the street, and there'll be more to come in the coming months and years, which is great. I'm also here because again, you can see it maybe just over my shoulder here, a little yellow sign. It's pointing towards Johnny LaRue Arena, which is one of the advanced polling stations. There's another one at Cardell Rec Center. It is advanced voting this weekend. The main voting day is September 20th. If you haven't received a voting card in the mail and you're wondering where to go in order to vote, you can go to elections.ca and get all that information. But I'm not going to get partisan. I'm not going to talk about the candidates, but I do really encourage residents to go out and cast your vote in this federal election. September 20th is the election day, and advanced polling are this weekend. I've got a lot to talk about. I want to start with back to school. We had French schools go back last week. We had the Catholic English Board going back on Tuesday, and then most students from the public board going back on Thursday. Just want to talk about some of the things that we've seen and heard from parents. First of all, there's a shortage of school buses, so I want to talk about that. We're seeing some crowding at Westwind Public School. You might have seen that on CBC. And we're seeing some concerns about traffic and safety around the schools. And I think all of these things are related, and that's what I want to talk about this morning. On school buses, a number of school buses across the city have been canceled due to a school bus driver shortage. I know there's some buses serving Stittsville Public, John Young Elementary, South Carleton and Goulburn that have been canceled. That's a really long trip for parents. If you have to drive your kids to South Carleton from Stittsville, that's probably 20 minutes in the morning to get to South Carleton and Richmond. So I'm really struggling to understand why OSTA, the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority, would have chosen those routes to cancel, where there's no alternative, OC Transpo alternative, and where there's no ability to walk or bike to Goulburn Middle School or to South Carleton. I have asked OC Transpo to look if there are resources to provide some alternative busing for students, so we're working on that. We have added a stop on Route 283 early in the morning that could help students going out to South Carleton. The afternoon run's a little bit later than is convenient, though, I know that. So check the OC Transpo travel planner. We're trying to find some alternatives. But I do completely understand frustration from parents around these school bus cancellations. Contact the school board trustee, Lynn Scott, and contact provincial MPP Goldie Gamari. The school buses are funded and organized by the school boards, not by the city. So want to make sure that parents are contacting their MPP and their school board trustee on that. Now, on the issue of crowding at Westwind and crowded schools elsewhere, and also around traffic and safety, I think it's something that we're seeing because of an approach that we've taken in Ontario, in our province, over the last 20 years, let's say. So it's not any one political party, but it's about this idea of having fewer local schools and more larger schools and more large classroom sizes. And so what you end up with is schools that it's more difficult for kids to actually walk to school. It's more difficult for kids to bike to school, so they need to be bused in or parents drive them in. So when we get to a situation with COVID, obviously that causes crowding in classrooms, but it also means that when parents aren't comfortable putting their kids on a school bus, or when we have driver cancellations, the only remaining alternative is to drive, and that's leading to lots of traffic around the schools. Now, we've been asking and reminding parents to put their kids on the school bus wherever possible, and if they're driving, park away from the school and walk the last few hundred meters to try to reduce some of that congestion around the schools. We've added some parking restrictions, no parking, no stopping. And I've had our traffic safety team out just to look at other measures. We've been able to add some crossing guards at different schools. We've been able to add some other safety measures. But ultimately the problem is we have too many kids who cannot walk to school. Walking to school is good for physical health, it's good for mental health, and it's good for social health in our community. And I think we need to start getting back towards smaller local schools that kids can walk to in our community. From a city planning side, there are 13 school sites. Well, let me back up. There's 11 school sites that are reserved within the Fernbank area. Fernbank will have, I think, 40,000 people by the time it's fully built out. And in the master plan that was set 12 years ago, there were 11 school sites set aside. One of those is Palma de Marais High School. The other is the public high school that's under construction. And there's 3 other elementary schools that have been funded. So that's 5 schools where they're under construction or funding confirmed, but it still leaves 6 school sites that haven't been spoken for. There's 2 more empty school sites in the Fairwinds neighborhood, and there's another high school site that's been put aside as part of a future development at 195 Huntmar near the police station. So there's no shortage of sites available through our city planning process for the schools. It's just that the approach from the province over the last, let's say 2 decades, perhaps a bit more, has been about consolidating fewer schools. So I hope that parents get a chance to when you're talking to MPP or next year there is a provincial election, talk about schools and about the need for local schools and how important local schools are in our community. I was talking to one parent this week who said, why does the city keep approving new homes in Stittsville when there is a lack of space for students in the schools? It's a good question. It's a complicated answer, I guess, or a complicated issue. First of all, we have this issue around crowding at schools all over the city of Ottawa. And so to stop it in Stittsville, we'd also have to stop it in stop growth in Stittsville, in Canada, in Barrhaven, in Orleans. That's not easy to do. We're in a housing crisis right now. And when we talk about housing crisis, there's a lot of facets of that. But one of them is the lack of places for people to move into. We have a really healthy city economically, and there's a lot of people who want to move to Ottawa. We have some people moving from the Toronto area for a better cost of living. Perhaps they're able to work remotely. But when I talk to people who are new to our community, many of them are moving here because they have a new job here. And they're coming from Toronto, they're coming from Montreal, they're coming from out east, they're coming from out west, they're coming from around the world. There's a lack of housing for them to move into. Any of the new homes that go up for sale with Minto or Richcraft or Cardell or any of the builders are snapped up very, very quickly. And I think we've seen that as well in our resale market. Over the past 2 years, housing prices from 2019 to 2021 went up 52%. So I think that's really a good illustration. So to stop growth would mean to put even more pressure on the local housing market, which is not something I think we want to do there. I understand there's concern about protecting property values and everything, and there's some concern about new growth and how that affects property values. But when you're seeing property values go up by 52% over a 2-year period, I think that's out of balance. That's more increase than is reasonable to be looking for there. So I'll suggest the only way we're going to slow down the housing market or slow down this demand for housing, it would be if our economy is failing, and that would be a bad sign for our city. We have a strong economy. We're creating a lot of jobs, particularly in technology, which is good, also in government to some extent, and that's attracting more people who want to live here. And people who are moving here are looking for a new job. There are also young adults who are looking for a home. Sometimes it's seniors who are downsizing and looking for appropriate smaller accommodations, whether that's a smaller townhome or whether that's a rental. Now, besides that part of the housing crisis, there's also the affordable housing crisis. In Ottawa, there's a waiting list of 12,000 people on the waiting list for affordable homes. That's a long waiting list. People are waiting years in order to get a home. This week at the city, we approved something called Herongate Hazelview that would see 1,000 new affordable housing built by a private developer, which is a pretty significant increase, but that's over 5 to 10 years. We also approved a capital spending program in order to build in Ottawa with assistance from other levels of government, more affordable housing. So there's obviously a lot that we need to do. I also recognize too, I think one of the objections around more homes in our community is a lack of transportation infrastructure. Roads like Robert Grant Avenue that need to be upgraded, streets like Fernbank and Maple Grove and Huntmar that are still really rural roads. So I realize that, and we're also working on a number of things at the city level around how do we fund these. It's a very complicated rule book that's set by the province in terms of how we can fund these things. And we're seeing the cost of these transportation projects skyrocket due to increasing construction costs. So all of our plans for the roads around here were set in 2013, and there was some budgeting done. The cost of all these roads has obviously gone up with construction, and I see us every year falling a little bit behind that. So we're going to need to find different options for how we finance roads. Right now, they're paid for by developers. They build homes, they pay development fees. Those development fees go towards new infrastructure like roads and transit and amenities like rec centers, pipes and sewers. But what we're collecting is not enough to meet up for the cost of what this new infrastructure actually costs to build. So it's a complicated issue, and I certainly want to speak more about this as we go. But I guess to sum up, we need more local schools in our community that kids can walk to. A simple solution would be to stop building homes, but that would have a detrimental effect on the housing crisis in our community. And I'd say in the federal election, I won't talk about party politics or any platforms, but I do think the housing crisis is one of the top 2 or 3 issues in the federal election. So if you're thinking about going out and voting, please take some time to read not only the party platforms, but a lot of the great articles that have been published recently in different newspapers and news sites about the housing crisis, and please take some time to get informed. I just saw a comment here. Carrie, thank you. The city needs to find a new funding model for road infrastructure. It shouldn't rely on developers. So if we don't rely on developers, it does mean we have to rely on existing taxpayers. That may mean we have to borrow some money. The cost of borrowing would get passed on to existing taxpayers, or we'd have to raise taxes in order to accumulate more money. So I think we should rely on developers. I think we should have a mechanism that allows us to borrow or perhaps get funding from a higher level of government who have more ability to raise revenue and pass that on to cities. Perhaps taxpayers are able to, would be willing to contribute a bit more locally. I'm not sure I've heard that clearly from residents. So it's a complicated question around funding and so on. I do think there's probably a mixture of things we can do, perhaps funding from federal government or provincial government if they're willing to give that to cities, and perhaps there is some borrowing we can do if we can be clear to residents about what the benefit is to people in our communities. Anyhow, that's the end of my rant today. Thank you for listening. I do have a few local updates. On the COVID front, Goodlife Fitness on Wednesday, September 15th, Goodlife over on Carp Road, they are doing a vaccination clinic from 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Thank you to Goodlife for doing that. It's open to their members at Goodlife, but also open to the public. So Ottawa Public Health will be there for a vaccination clinic. Wednesday, September 15th, Goodlife on Carp Road. Here in Stittsville, we're undergoing some ward boundary changes. There's an election here about a year from now, and we've extended the boundary of Stittsville to include the Traditions neighborhood to the south, and then some little tweaks around the northern edge as well. There's also the opportunity to change the ward name. I don't think we need to change the ward name for Stittsville, but if you have some thoughts or feedback on that, perhaps there's another name, and please, nobody say Stitts Vegas. Send me an email about that. Ottawa Public Health just reported yesterday, they do studies, sampling of mosquitoes for West Nile virus, and the first positive case of West Nile. They found, not in humans, but in these mosquitoes. They've detected West Nile for the first time this year. There's only 3 human cases detected this year in the entire province of Ontario. So it's not widespread, but Ottawa Public Health is reminding you, if you're going out this fall, use some bug spray and look around your property and make sure there's no standing water. Nowhere that water can accumulate where mosquitoes are going to breed and live. And the last thing today, The city council has decided that on September 30th, we will be recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's going to be a city holiday, so much like Remembrance Day, city offices will be closed. There'll be some recreation programs continuing and so on that day, but along with the federal government and federal civil servants, City of Ottawa will be recognizing that as well. I think it's a very important gesture of respect and recognition, and a step of reconciliation that's really important to take. So perhaps if you're an employer, it's something you could look at with your place of business and consider as well. September 30th, it'll be a new yearly day of recognition. That's it for me today. It looks like another nice day today. I hope you get out to explore your neighborhood. Can I recommend take a walk down Stittsville Main Street, check out the new banners that are here, support local, stop in at a local coffee shop or a local store and support them with your business. When you're thinking about shopping, whether it is in-store or online, think about a Stittsville business first. They would really appreciate your support. Have a great week. Take care.